Chinese were building that seaport in Somalia. With those two key locations taken care of, they have the ability to choke that entire strategic Suez Canal route. This key strategic location is very interesting. From the earliest explorers and colonizers, you can watch some interesting history of how the Portuguese fought the Arabs. Indians around the Sudan region in the 15 and 1600s. Apart from Russia in Sudan, the Russians were also operating in Libya. With that corridor from Libya right to Sudan onto Somalia, they would control the northern portion of Africa from the Mediterranean to the Horn of Africa. Control via the landmass and control of the shipping lanes. The Americans are rushing in there now. America's army is not what it used to be. Nothing like the Vietnam soldiers. I have seen a lot of their regular soldiers training and I am not impressed. This is not a dig or an insult to Americans or intended that way, it is simply a realistic assessment of the caliber of their modern-day soldiers. I am pretty sure most Americans would agree, you do not need a military degree to be able to distinguish between high-caliber troops and less qualified troops. I am sure they still have elite troops, but I am talking about your general foot soldier here. I listen to a lot of alternative media and the impression I get is that the patriotic Americans, nationalists, patriots, the original stock of America, have essentially given up on this democratic form of America. They have turned their back on it, and many have said they would not join the army to protect what is essentially an anti-white, anti-European America. This is exactly what the commies wanted to take place through their subversive and demoralizing actions going back to the 1960s in America and in many ways, going back even further. The American patriots must not give up on the ideals of their forefathers, keep the flame of those forefathers alive. Can anyone blame them though? Why would you want to fight for a country that demonizes you for being white and pro-America? Well, how do you shift that and get the masses on board? Well, you blow the Trump horn, MAGA. How any patriot can ever vote again is another mystery. If they can steal it once, they can do it over and over and over again. Trump says it was stolen, so then how can he even be sure it won't be stolen again? And if he wins, how can we be sure that they never rigged it in his favor? Getting back to the US Army. So what the American Army seems to be left with are non-European founding stock soldiers. I would say 60% of their soldiers now are not European Americans. This is like watching Rome or ancient Egypt play out before our eyes. You import the third world, you become the third world. You import third world soldiers and you become the third world. You import foreign people to fight your wars, you eventually lose, period. America alone without our allies could hardly defeat the Germans. What do you think would have happened in World War II if they sent non-Europeans to fight the Germans and if they sent their transgenders to battle? If it was not for the Soviets fighting on the West side, I highly doubt the West would have won, the would or could have still been raging on. These new American soldiers are not just foreign peoples. We are not talking about our stock such as the former Prussians or Russians used as mercenaries in the past, but third world peoples who have never fought major wars with Western European technology. The Soviets found this out in the Bush War. They eventually had to handle the more sophisticated weaponry and import the Cubans to do the heavy lifting. If these new third world troops would not stay and fight in their own country for a democracy, how can anyone expect them to fight a Western European-style war against the most battle-hardened people? The best fighting forces historically have been Europeans. You cannot put non-Europeans in a combat environment to fight the toughest. Most harden soldiers in a hostile environment and then think technology will make up for the lack of their experience or capabilities. The result of these actions will result in such catastrophic losses abroad that it will put mainland America in danger. Once their troops have been depleted overseas and the enemy has gained victory and courage, the next step will be to attack the mainland. Maybe I am wrong, who knows? Perhaps these new soldiers can win over their opponents by offering their enemies some Bud Light beer and throw a trans strip show. If that doesn't do the trick, I cannot see it ending well. This is Africa. The Soviets learned the hard way when facing off with the former S.A.D.F., who were used to fighting in this terrain. They are also heading into Islamic territory. If they start shooting at any Islamic peoples, or innocent Islamic civilians get caught up in the crossfire, it will only further trigger anger and more hostilities from the Islamic world. We already see it building up with Turkey and Iran openly talking about challenging Israel for what is taking place, with them attacking the Muslims and insulting their holy Muslim mosques and shrines in Palestine. The Americans will essentially be fighting against Islamists, Chinese and Russians in North Africa. Not to mention the African states who will be supporting this Eastern Bloc in confronting and fighting against America and the West. Maybe, just maybe, I'm just saying, maybe Washington should not have thrown the white South Africans under the bus. Oh well, they say if you gonna be dumb you best be real tough. Good luck. We fought the Soviets, been there, done that, now it's your turn. Please people, this is not our war. Do not send your nephews, sons or grandchildren to fight for the West who stabbed you in the back, left you to get murdered in your houses, on your farms. Who kept quiet with 116 race-based laws. Not once in 28 years did you ever hear of a Western embassy ever talk about the plight of our nation. They kept silent, nice friends. They watched as you were abused, raped, tortured, beaten, murdered, and these hypocritical, self-righteous nations with all their virtual signaling did not even say a single word. Besides, how can you fight with the West who are openly against Europeans and hate anything white? Do not be surprised if they start showing up here. They already have, to try win you over. This is not our fight. Under their enforced democracy in 28 years we had more of our people murdered than all the deaths from all the previous wars we had, going back to 1652 when our ancestors arrived on the southern tip of Africa. Over 120,000 of our folk, our people, our blood and kin stained the floors of farmhouses, cars soaked with blood from hijackings. The squatter camps filled with children who have no future and never forget who did it to you. For the international readers who may think this is an exaggeration or some lie, please interview and speak to white South Africans. I alone had more than 4 family members hijacked, shot, and 2 murders in my immediate family, and they all took place after 1994 when the West forced this democracy onto the whites of South Africa. As the seer foretold, you knelt down to the West and the wall came down. Everything fell apart. Bow to the Most High, praise and call upon Him. A friend who will never let you down. The West is in this position because they are lukewarm in everything they do. All their partners have abandoned them, yet our folk, loyal folk, many of your grandfathers fought in World War II and perhaps your great-grandfathers in World War I, and some joined in during the Korean War, and for what? What did we ever get from it? What did you get from it? Nothing. They sold us down the river, suck it up. It's what happened, there is no sugarcoating it. See it for what it is. Who knows, perhaps it's karma for what Smuts did by stealing German Southwest Africa. Unfortunately, knowing our history, seeing our people, we have not yet come together. All the infighting, all the bickering, and before we know it, some sellout will make agreements to join in and go fight the war like Yellow Jan Smuts. If you do, you will be cannon fodder. And as per the revolution dream vision, it will come about to force us to eventually join in. Good cop, bad cop. Stoke a revolution, step in as the good guy, but nothing is for free. For the protection, join us, that is what will happen. Do not be surprised when it happens. I foresee more direct American and Russian clashes taking place outside of Ukraine rather than inside the territory of Ukraine for now. If they push Russia too far in Ukraine, they know the war will move into Western Europe. The wax will melt and touch those countries. It's unavoidable at this stage. Africa is going to be a hotbed now of activity. Not only Western nations, Russian and Chinese, but I see more Islamic activity. Turkey is in Libya, as the dream foretold in 2019, and with Saudi Arabia pivoting towards the Russo-Chinese BRIC alliance. We will see more of these Islamic nations who want to join BRICS also join in here in Africa to protect their interests within the BRIC sphere of influence. This very well could be the northern neighbors, threatening the seer mentioned. Wanting to protect interests in South Africa and Africa due to their BRICS affiliation and relationship. The issues in Sudan, Somalia could very well be that the conflict destabilizes the entire North Africa. When you combine inflation, wheat, food shortages, now war on those borders, more of those people will be pushed into the surrounding nations, and the effect will be even more mass migration into Europe. Europe is about to get flooded. What you have seen so far in terms of mass third world migration into Europe is but a trickle. This is where the flood begins. I think this is where we will see the dream of migrants being shot kick in. There is a video on the S.O.T.H channel of Russians behind a lot of this mass migration into Europe, just as the seer spoke about. The seer said in one of his visions that Russia and China would be behind a lot of this, but never lose sight of WHO exactly was behind the Bolshevik Revolution. Who controls the media, the banks for the full picture? Remember, they hate Europeans the most. They have historically aligned with nations to attack European Christendom from the days the apostles went to preach to the lost houses of Israel scattered in Western Europe and Asia Minor. So if anyone thinks the mass migration into Europe has slowed or stopped, it has only just begun. I eventually see this war moving down into the Central African Republic, as per the dream vision, and we will see a two-pronged approach. When Turkey paved over the roads, entered Libya as per the dream vision, now deeply involved in conflicts throughout the Middle East and stretching to the Caucasus Mountains. American troops were despondent, and then I heard the words CAR Central African Republic. During the lockdowns of 2020, I had a vision of clashes in Central African Republic with the French, Russians and Americans. This war in Africa will start from the top, the Horn of Africa, then we will find like a pincer movement. The southern tip of Africa become a hotbed of activity from all these major nations. I said, it will be like giant bull elephants all fighting over this country of ours, but it is for God's purposes and our future that all these events will unfold and take place. The New World Order will end in South Africa. God has already decided who will rule the land and who will inherit it. It was decided a long time ago. Our covenant is an everlasting covenant which will stretch to the equator in time, where the cloud of protection shall be over the nation.